Welcome to Boatcast, a podcast on a boat. The whole idea of this podcast is we float with the stories. This is a part of a larger show which is called Amphibian Aesthetics, which is brought to you by Ishara House and Ari Archives, and generously supported by Muziris Heritage Project. I'm talking to Professor M V Narayanan, whom I'm going to refer to as MV throughout the show. When I had a brief conversation with him, a phone conversation with Professor Narayanan, take less than 30 seconds and say, hey man, this is going to be fun, and talking to him is going to be fun. And that's what happened, and we hit it off. And I have kept his podcast, shooting of his podcast to the end so that I can take him away and take him out for a drink with me. And that's a promise. I'm going to kidnap you just to pick his brains. And he's full of anecdotes, he's full of stories, full of knowledge. And what I like about him is he wears this heavy load very lightly. And welcome to the show.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Professor Narayanan was the Vice Chancellor of a Sanskrit university. Your English certainly has a slight Oxbridge accent. So Professor Narayanan has studied a lot about Indian cultural studies, popular theatre culture, performance studies, and you got a doctoral degree in UK in
That's right. The University of Exeter.
Exeter. He is also a fellow at the Indian Institute of Advanced Studies. That I know why he was saying you can leave that aside. He contributes to various papers. He contributes to various important publications. And I will share that in the show notes, some of his work which I have liked. The whole idea of doing this thing on a boat, MV, was this route has stories. And we are going to reach Kodangallur and start at Kodangallur. What I found is there's on old, this whole area, not particularly, I don't know whether Kodangallur is the area, I may be wrong, but there's the first synagogue.
Yes.
Here on this there is a church, first church, St. Thomas Church, and also a first mosque of the entire. And Kerala has, and in Chennamangalam, you have them in a vicinity of 50 areas, a mosque, a church, and I see, yes. And we were in Mattancherry where 40 communities are living together. Now, this comes, and most importantly, as an outsider, when I see Onam being celebrated, it's not a religious festival. It is celebrated by all of Kerala across communities. So there has been a syncretic culture.
Absolutely.
So let's dive into this podcast with the syncretic culture.
Yes.
Of.
But before that, you made a mention about going by the boat, about the waterway. Actually, there used to be a time when it was possible for one to travel from the northern part of Kerala to the southernmost part of Kerala without ever setting foot on soil through the waterways. It was an interconnected, complex network of waterways whereby you could go by Vanji, the rowing boat, or smaller vessels, right from the northernmost part to the southernmost part. The sad part is that was also part of that agricultural system where you could hold water in during the hot seasons. While the monsoons come, the bunds are open so that it would go into the sea, but just before the monsoons end, the bunds are closed so that the whole water is held inside, and water is preserved as long as possible in order to enable agriculture. So what I'm saying is, this is a coastal area and we are traveling by sea, but Kerala has always been not just land, it has been water to equal measure because of the internal waterways, the backwaters, etc. So I think it makes sense to actually talk about Kerala inside a boat. In fact, I would go further and say, where else will you talk about Kerala? The choices.
And talking to you has given me an idea of trying to do this journey internally, and even if it is it. So someone tried to recreate that famous 80-day.
The trip through
around the world in 80 days.
Yes.
But he took, in modern times, he took 170 days.
Yes. You could try something of that sort here easily. Right now, because of modern buildings and modern roadways, etc., some of those canals have been closed, and somewhere it would be necessary for you to set foot on soil. But at least to actually kind of historically recreate or reconstruct that ancient route, it would be worth.
So what I like about this conversation is it is just going to meander and flow into each other, because you've just opened a rabbit hole, and I'm going to talk to you about this show. This show is called Sea, a Boiling Vessel, which is what you're talking about. Actually, the waterways are boiling.
Yes.
And the bunds created are there no more,
And when you spoke about the syncretic culture, I mean, you use the most apt word, most suitable word, because I would call Kerala to be a kind of palimpsest, where you have a number of historical layers, one above the other. And none of them are exclusive. They are not as if watertight compartments. They are all interacting with each other. So much so that it is quite possible for us to find a word which is probably 20 centuries old, or a word which has come here through the migratory habits of certain people in other parts of the world. So, as you said, the arrival of Judaism, Hebrew culture, Christianity, Islam, all of them primarily through the routes of the sea. But along with that, even before that, we had Buddhism and Jainism coming. And that is during the time of Ashoka. You had Buddhism through Ashoka's missionaries. But parallel to that, we also had incursions or migrations from Sri Lankan Theravada Buddhists coming to Kerala. And the Irava community here today, they trace their roots to those migratory people. They come from Elam, which is Tamil.
Which is Tamil.
Yeah, exactly, Tamil Elam. And so the word Iravas, etymologically, they say that it is related to the idea of Sri Lanka. The story, it's not historically verified as such, but it is said that they were invited here by one of the kings in order to further coconut plantation as well as a labor force. So we had Buddhism here from the 3rd century. We also had Jainism. Jains were great traders, and they created these huge routes of trade throughout India, and they established temples. Because when you're traveling from one place to the other, you need to rest at the end of the day, and you need to have a place which is safe and secure, and which could also be a place of worship. And so there were these settlements which actually took place on the banks of rivers, especially at confluence of rivers, because they would be delta areas and they would be fertile. You will have plenty of water, and you find a lot of temples which have clear vestiges or remnants of Jain history behind them. The Irinyalukuda temple, which is quite close to Parur and quite close to Kodungalur, is supposed to have a Jain history. But then later, with the arrival of Brahminism in force by the 8th century and the establishment of around 32 settlements in Kerala, many of these temples were assimilated into the Brahmin faith. which now is known as the Hindu faith or the Hindu culture. So what you find here is, I mean, there are temples, there are statues which are reminiscent of the Buddha. The Ayyappa temple, Shabrimala Ayyappa temple, especially in terms of the posture of the deity and the different rituals that are connected to it. There are stories that it was originally a tribal god, but also that the Ayyappa, the word Ayyappa again, is connected with the Buddhist faith.
With the
Buddhist faith.
Oh.
So Swami, the word Swami, Ayyappa Swami, Buddha, Sangham Saranam Gacchami. That whole, yeah. So the whole thing.
Yes.
The whole thing. What is interesting here is that it is not the erasure of a previous culture. It's not as if something is completely erased and thrown out. But there are super inscriptions which take place again and again, and which super inscriptions do try to hide the ones beneath, but they still shine forth in a certain manner of speaking. So that's why when you described it as syncretic, it is absolutely true on the one level. But on another level, the other side of that coin is that from the 8th century on, because earlier what we had here, according to historians, are the indigenous people who were basically proto-Australoid or proto-Negroid. And following that, we had the Dravidian population here. It is with the arrival of the Buddhists, the Jains, and then from the 8th century, the Brahmin settlements, that we had another set of people coming in. So till the 8th century, there are no indications of caste. It's from the 8th century, especially with the establishment of temple centers or temple villages, and the kind of division of society in terms of Chadurvarnya, that we have the institution of caste. There are stories before that of there being Pulaya kings. Pulayas are considered outcasts in the Brahmin or the Hindu system. But there are stories of a Pulaya queen who was wooed by several other kings because she was smittingly beautiful and she was also quite wealthy. So this idea of this hierarchical gradated system came in only by the 8th century. So syncretism is one thing, but the flip side of the coin is that from that point onwards, there has been this quite rigid system of caste, which has come to define Kerala, so much so that Vivekananda couldn't help it but say that this is a madhouse.
Did he?
He said that.
Yeah.
Bharandalayam, it's a madhouse. Seeing the rituals, the beliefs, the superstitions connected with that, Vivekananda so famously said that this is a madhouse.
I am wondering what Vivekananda would have said if he was here now in India today. He would have had to use much stronger words.
Yes, much stronger words and probably more about North India.
Yes. So now I'm coming to what you said was one was not erased, and it just added to it and it changed over the course of, and you used a beautiful word which only a learned person and young people might not even know that you used a word palimpsest, which is layers, like layers of onion skins.
Yes, of different times.
Yeah, of different time. What I don't see is in architecture, like especially Buddhist. So across India, wherever the Buddhist architecture, there is some amount of similarity with the chaityas and the viharas. I think the viharas were resting place and the chaitya was meditation halls and all that. I may be wrong, but you may correct me.
Yes, you're right.
Yeah. So, but I don't see that here.
You're right in terms of the larger architecture. But there are temples, for example, the Thrissur Vadakunathan temple, where the northern side clearly makes you feel you are in the presence, you're within a Buddhist monastery.
Oh, is it?
With these cloistered cells, or cells which are kind of quite reminiscent of the Buddhist architecture. Some of it is.
Where is this?
This is in Thrissur. It's in
I
Thrissur.
must visit.
You should visit that.
And then I'll visit you.
Definitely. No, what I'm saying is, probably at that point of time, the kind of splendorous architecture that you find later on coming up wasn't there. And by the time that the architecture, what is left to us today, by the time those were built, it was much later. And by that time, Brahminism had already clearly established its domination. And at least the mainland of Kerala, I wouldn't go to the extent of saying that the coastal regions were fully incorporated into that. They were still outside. But at least the mainland of Kerala, the central land of Kerala, was largely within the structure of this Brahminical system.
So now I want to ask you, and since you are also a person who has studied theatre and culture and spaces, and your book on space, and which we will talk a little later, was it, because across India you got hard stones like basalt and even and malleable stone like sandstone, which would give that architecture its space. But here in the western coast, and especially the Malabar coast, and let's go up to even Konkan, you have laterite, which may
And granite.
and granite.
The difference is that laterite has been used almost entirely or largely with domestic architecture and also with public architecture like offices or houses or palaces, etc. Granite has been used primarily for temples, places of worship.
Oh, is it?
Yes. You will find that in most of the major temples, the bigger temples of Kerala, it's primarily granite that is used.
Yeah.
And the laterite, till quite recently, now laterite has become really difficult to obtain because it has been taken over by bricks, the kiln-made bricks. But till recently, laterite used to be laterite with mud paste, a kind of paste which is made from the combination of a number of different natural ingredients like mud plaster, and it's also mud cement to actually put them together. So there was also this method of rubbing the laterite stone one over the other, which would produce a paste and which would work like an adhesive, so that laterite actually sticks together. And the most important thing about laterite is the older it gets, it doesn't get weaker. It kind of stays. So this division, you actually find that.
Laterite is also porous.
It is.
It's like a Swiss cheese,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And granite is hard, so probably in temples and all that you needed to give a form.
Yes, and because in temples you also needed sculptures.
Sculptures, exactly.
Sculptures.
That's what I meant.
And those sculptures were thematic in nature. Those sculptures also had the, shall we say, the added responsibility of creating an aura or an environment there. The Salabhanjigas, the Devis, etc. So almost, but you find this in Tamilagam too, in Tamil Nadu too, of which Kerala was a part. Even though the granite there is of a softer kind, and granite here is a harder kind, you find this granite medium being used in temples all over Tamil Nadu, Brihadeshwaram, all those major temples are again primarily made of granite. And the good thing about laterite is that my house is made of laterite, with mud plastering inside. The best thing about laterite is that it absorbs the heat. And so there is a kind of climate control that is made possible in the interiors by the usage of laterite, which brings about a change or a drop of nearly 4 to 5 degrees from the outside to the inside, even during the height of summers.
Yeah, so that's really, so we have gone from syncretic culture to architecture, which is good, which makes this podcast very rich, and it gives it a breadth, because that breadth and depth is what we need. Now let's come back to the intermingling of cultures, and so there were three major powers, which was the Travancore kingdom, and then the Kochi king, and the Malabar Calicut, Zamorin, and then that kept changing.
That kept changing in the sense. Let me say that the northern part of Kerala, you had other kingdoms too. And this idea of kingship is a rather difficult kind of idea. I mean, it's a Western imposition on what is basically a very different system. We had all these small little principalities, and at one given point of time, they would be allied to one dominant principality. Okay. And so, over a number of centuries, we had three dominant powers: one Calicut, the other Perumbadappa or Kochi, and the third Wayanad or Trivandrum. At the same time, allied to them, or sometimes quasi-independent, are these smaller principalities, which may sometimes be no larger than a village or 5 or 10 villages, where there would be a feudal lord. So this is a very flexible kind of system. It was not as if this alliance is, for example, Parur. Parur, there was a king of Parur, or a Tampuran or a Raja of Parur, who used to change his sites from Kochi to Travancore and back to Kochi and again to Travancore. So this jostling for space, jostling for power, jostling for territory, so to speak, has been there throughout. After the Vijayanagaram, era of power here, this has continued for a long time.
Yeah, so nothing has changed. You were saying that this was a very federal system?
In a way, it was a federal system. In a way, it was you could call it so, but federal not in terms of a clear contract of federal nature. It was federal by virtue of the way in which the land was divided up by these different people, who had their own little armies sometimes, who had their own income, who had their own people serving them. So it's again a flexible kind of federal system that you had.
Yeah. So did these kings and these powers, the dominant powers, had a foresight that if there is no strife within the people, then economically this whole...
No, that has never been the case.
No? Or is it the opposite?
As with the rest of India, there has always been struggles among these lords. And that's exactly one reason that the colonial powers found it easy to interfere and intervene. Because in order to kind of get more power or in their fight with another neighboring lord, they sought the help of the Portuguese, the Dutch, the British, one after the other, which slowly led to the domination of these powers. First it was Portuguese, then it became Dutch, and then the British. Even though the British did not have a, shall I say, violent takeover, but it was more an insidious kind of thing by controlling. Only in Malabar they had direct rule, but in the rest of the places they basically dictated terms to the Zamorin, to Cochin, and to Wayanad.
So, like what they did with the most of the principalities and most of the across India,
exactly.
The
quite similar
rulers across India. So, like Rajasthan was never part of Rajasthan or Madhya Pradesh.
Yes,
they were always ruled by their Rajas, own people, but who were aligned to
the who were also answerable in terms of paying taxes, who were also answerable in terms of creating policies. No, it's very interesting. There is a story of this Raja of Cochin, who was quite, shall I say, progressive person, and he was interested in bringing in education, science, new forms of transport, etc. He, as most of them are named, he was named Ramavarma. So he introduced the railway. He started the work for the Cochin Harbour and the Cochin Port. He introduced the established observatory. And after a while, it became clear to the British that apparently this person's reforms are going to make Cochin much better than the Madras presidency.
Oh.
So they started putting hurdles in his path. The man was also pretty well English educated. So he wrote a letter to the British governor in Madras saying that if this were the case, if everything that I try were to be, not approved by the British, it would be better for me to abdicate.
Oh.
They hung on to that and said, now that you've said you're ready to abdicate, you go ahead and abdicate. And he was forced to abdicate.
Oh.
And so he's called the Orinya Valiya Thamburan, the big king who abdicated. So, and why I'm saying that here is that there was this alignment there, but at the same time, it was an alignment which prohibited these principalities to work entirely by themselves and determine a way forward in the way that they wanted. So this king's, she's called Ramavarma, the king who abdicated.
And then after him, probably a puppet would have.
It's a matrilineal system, and so whoever is senior most at that point of time becomes the king, and he continued under the directions of the British. Not much choice.
Which is actually nothing has changed.
Yeah.
So when in India, there's always a joke that when you were appointed a railway minister, you made a railway station in your constituency and not
in
another which needs one.
Yeah.
And similarly, if you're a prime minister or a president, or you're a powerful person, you will see that your state is most taken care of, and the people who have supported you earlier. So actually, that continues. That continues, and which I feel is a very myopic way of looking at it. What do you think of it?
Absolutely. It is a myopic way of it's more than myopic. It's actually quite, shall we say,
Sick.
It's sick. It actually disables communities and societies. And it's continuing in a certain fashion. But one thing that I just wanted to say, I was hoping you would ask that question. Sorry to put it that way. But the syncretic nature that we spoke of, one positive side of that, despite the caste system being there, is that there has been a continuous culture of largely peaceful coexistence among the people belonging to different faiths. And this is not just an idealistic story. It's neither a myth nor a mere narrative, but there are clear indications, historical indications of people living together. There would occasionally be clashes, and that happens even within the communities themselves. But there is an acceptance of the presence of the other and the right of the other to stay there. There are even instances where inter-community cooperation is actually made sacrosanct in certain temples where a Christian merchant has to provide the oil before the start of the festival, or a Muslim person has to provide the clean cloth for the temple festival to start. These are, in a manner of speaking, the Tekkan Chittur temple here, which is quite close here. When the festival starts, a Muslim trader has to bring a can of oil and hand it over to the priest, and on that day he can enter and come right in front of the sanctum sanctorum and give it to the chief priest. And the idea is that from that day onwards, the festival lamp, the main lamp, will be lit by this. Now what it shows is that faith was connected to the economy. And communities are held together by trade, by agriculture, by the selling and buying of produce. And economy is part and parcel of the way in which you live. And that economy gets institutionalized in the ritual practices, where it is the Muslims who bring this. Even today, in the Thrissur Pooram, the great Thrissur Pooram festival, the entire fireworks system is done by Muslim people.
Yeah, and then there are some Christian stalls there, and who...
Not just Christian stalls, it's a Christian community which builds the entire pandal, the entire, what do you call it in English? The structures.
The
structures. And there is even a story that at one point of time, the two temples, the Barmekav and the Tiruvumbadi temples, who together hold this, they fell into some kind of a argument, and they were not prepared to hold the Pooram. And so finally, the Christian community, who are the primary merchants there, went to the Maharaja and said, if they are not prepared to do it, we will do it. And it is, yes, it's a matter of communal harmony, but it's also a matter of economy, because the Pooram has to take place for the merchant community to actually sell their wares in a huge fashion at that point of time. So what I'm saying is, this is not an idealist version. This is a very practical version of an economy which has thrived through cooperation and exchange, being institutionalized in certain religious practices.
That's what I was coming to. In fact, I had not skipped that, but we are going so many things. Like I didn't know.
I digress.
No. Like I didn't know about the Jain and the Buddhist. So I was going to come to that, and that's why that question on the whether the kings understood the economy or did the people understood the economy, and hence there was the intermingling and the harmony there.
I would say that the people understood the economy more, because ultimately it was not as if power was entirely centered or accumulated with the hands of the kings alone. That was not the case. You had other centers of power, like the chieftains, the military lords, the Brahmin lords, the temples. So it was more of a very loose system of power. And we can only say that the kings were one point of power, not the only point of power, which meant that the kind of absolute monarchy that you find in the West, or totalitarian absolute monarchy that you find in the West, is totally absent here. And that is where I said that to actually equate this or look at the monarchies here, if you want to call them monarchies, in the same light as what you find in the West would be a complete mistake.
And it's a So it's very interesting, because at the synagogue in Paravur, not Parur.
Chandamagalam.
No, Parur, I think. Parur, the oldest one. I saw a plaque which the local ruler had given, maybe the ruler,
yes, actually,
which says that we give you all access and you can do business here. And
that was how it was. It was, let's say, you can look at it as an act of generosity, which it could very well be. But more than an act of generosity, it was also an act of practicality in enabling people to settle here, to stay here, so that they can, which will enrich their trade practices. And there would be centers of trade on the coast here. It makes sense.
Absolute sense. And the language is very flowery, theatrical, dramatic, which says that till the light shines, and and I'm sure in Malayalam it will be even more.
I don't know.
Since you are a person who has studied theater and culture, and the symbolisms, they come from the food and the clothes we wear, and that actually makes the other. It can be created by us as a community, and but that I find less, or probably now after, but earlier it would not have been existent at all.
Actually, there is a contemporary, this idea of the Kerala food or the Kerala attire, the Kerala dress. Just like the Scottish kilt, it is a myth. The Scottish kilt was never the Scottish attire. At a point of time in the late 19th century, when they wanted to, part of their nationalism, as wanting to define themselves different from the British, they wanted a symbol that would make them different. And the Scottish kilt was designed, and they started wearing it at that point of time. It has no previous history, nowhere, anywhere. And films right now, which actually show Macbeth and 16th century Scottish lords in the kilt, are completely anachronistic. They do not make sense. When you look at Kerala food, for instance, which is identified as Kerala food, what is typical or quintessentially Kerala food today? Hot, spicy, lots of chili and all that. But if you look at these ingredients, a lot of these ingredients were very late in coming. The green chili, it was brought in by the Portuguese from South America. The red chili, similarly. Potato is brought by the Portuguese. What we had in Kerala, what we can call, indigenous to Kerala, is a pumpkin. Then we have the kela, the special kind of banana that we have, vara, which is the hard variety. It is supposedly of Kerala. Even tapioca, which is a major, almost a staple diet here, was brought by the Portuguese from South America. Tomatoes from South America. So, what I'm asking is, what is Kerala food? And the attire that we have, and at earlier point of time, given the weather and the climate here, people were not prone to wearing any upper cloth. It was quite humid, it was hot. They would probably have a knee-length cloth or a longer cloth if you are more affluent and more upper class or upper caste. But otherwise, this was all that was there to it. The so-called Kasava sari and the Kasava munda and all that, the set munda, the Kerala set or the Kerala sari, hardly in the 20th century.
Oh, is it?
Yeah. A kind of copying, a kind of redesigning of the Tamil Kanchipuram sari. So what I'm trying to say is that these identities, which are constructed through these means, are quite often, as Hobsbawm would put it, they are invented traditions. Yes. Let me add this too. A lot of words that are so ordinary in Malayalam language. We have a lot of Sanskrit words for which there are also Dravidian or Tamil equivalents. And these equivalents are considered inferior. The others are, yes. So, Chattupoi, died, is considered a bad word. But if you say Andarichu, that's taken from Sanskrit, it is a more polite, refined word. But there are words which are so germane to Malayalam. Kasera, chair, from Portuguese. Mesha, table, from Portuguese. Janala, window, from Portuguese. You just go through this list. These are all, what shall I say, not even Sanskritized words. These are not upper level words. These are very ordinary, everyday words. And they're all Portuguese. There are some words with Dutch origin. There are words with origin from Carnatic, Kannada language. So even when you speak of linguistic identity, that earlier idea of the palimpsest comes in. And what is and I think that is very important, and that's why Kerala becomes crucial. Especially today, when certain singular identities are being foisted upon the country, and other identities are considered foreign or othered, or there is an attempt to expel them or to send them to Pakistan, so to speak, which is the favorite word that they use. We are effectively forgetting, erasing, mutilating our own history. Our history, which is not a singular line, but multiple lines coalescing, coming together into creating what we are today. I think this applies to almost every part of India, but in Kerala it's so manifest. It is so evident, so to speak, because, as you said, the adjacent presence of three different prayer houses or worship places without much of a problem among them. Maybe the occasional skirmish will happen, but that's human nature. But other than that, nothing major. And they still manage to work together. The Fort Cochin synagogue, just next to it, there was the Hindu temple.
Yes, and it exists today too.
It exists today too. So what it indicates is a certain, let's put it very simply, live and let live.
Live and let live. The words you used, Mesha and Janala, is, if you look at Persian, and I'm learning Urdu and I've done, Mez is a desk.
Exactly.
And Janal is actually a window. So the chair was, what did you say?
Kasera.
Kasera. So lot of, so you, and again you said that the green pepper replaced the black pepper.
Yes.
And actually the other happened in Europe. The green pepper was replaced by the white pepper and black pepper, the pods. So this always happens, and this we take.
No, ultimately, it's like this: that analogy you talked about, the analogy of the onion. You peel an onion to find its heart. You peel and peel and peel. Finally, there is nothing left.
And then you say there was no onion, there was only peels.
Exactly. It's the peels which make the onion.
Yes, exactly.
There's no core. It's actually,
and that is very important for us to know. So if you really look at that, I can talk about Maharashtra, the surnames and the thing all come from Persian, which has come in the 20th century. Amdar or Khasdar, which is the assemblyman and a parliamentarian, it comes from Diwane Am and Diwane Khas.
Yes.
So now let's talk about Sanskrit. How come? And this I want to know in a scholarly way, and this might be a little low-grade question for you, but how come, like most of South India had Dravidian influence, like Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, but Kerala, which is actually nestled here, it's just at the corner, has had so much Sanskrit influence in the language.
Yes, but Kerala, Malayalam actually traces its roots to Tamil.
Okay.
The whole of Tamilagam at one point during the Sangam age included Kerala. The famous Kavya Chilappadigaram,
Okay.
written by Ilango Adigal, was written here at Kodungalur.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Kavya?
Chilappadigaram,
Oh.
the famous poem Chilappadigaram, which is considered probably the greatest classic work in Tamil. It was written here in Kodungalur.
Oh.
It refers to the story who was who in her anger of the king of Madurai, killing her husband for a mistaken theft, plucks her breast and throws it on the city of Madurai, turning it into flames. And then she comes to Kodinallur, and here she becomes an incarnation of goddess Durga or Kali.
And the Kodungudu Amma is the same?
It's the same. And that poem was written here at Kodunallur in Tamil, the classical Tamil, which basically means Kerala was part of Tamilagam at that point of time. Later, naturally, as languages form, a certain regional variety of Tamil developed here. But with the advent of Sanskrit, especially literary Sanskrit, a lot of the structure of Malayalam still remains primarily Dravidian. The grammar is primarily Dravidian or Tamil. But there's been a huge influx of vocabulary from Sanskrit into Malayalam. And which has also created a kind of gradation in, as I indicated earlier, in the words. The Sanskrit words are considered superior, more refined. The Tamil words or words with Tamil origin or roots are considered inferior, sometimes vulgar. And that is right.
How did it happen?
It has happened primarily, again, the Brahmin influence. Brahmins brought the Sanskrit. The Sanskrit was considered ritual language. Sanskrit was considered the language of the gods, of the temples. They were the dominating forces, and they took up creativity into their own hands. And so slowly Tamil or whatever is connected to Tamil came to be seen an inferior light.
So this is in the 7th century or 8th century?
This would have started in the 7th, 8th century. And by the 14th, 13th century, Malayalam started becoming quite different from Tamil. And even now, when you read the texts of the 13th or 14th or even 15th century Malayalam, you find they are very resonant of Tamil.
What is it?
Very referent. The word endings, the kind of inflections that you have to denote certain kinds of grammatical properties, they are all from Tamil, even though the vocabulary has become more and more Sanskritized.
So the UGC or present government should not have a problem because this is more Sanskrit than Hindi.
But that is a problem.
Huh?
It's not, it's not a question of Sanskrit as a language is not a bad language. It's a brilliant language. It is a repository of a huge, shall we say, amount of knowledge and wealth in that sense. But it's a way in which Sanskrit is presented and Sanskrit is imposed. That is where the problem comes up. One need not advocate the rejection of Sanskrit or even the rejection of Hindi for that matter, but it is when a certain kind of, shall I say, superior, inferior, more powerful, less powerful kind of dialectic is brought into it that it becomes a problem.
Absolutely.
And that becomes very important today, especially because we have to realize that languages are dying by the day. A lot of languages are disappearing. And with that, the cultures are also disappearing. Once a word is lost, that practice, that experience is lost. You don't have a memory of that because the word which can evoke that memory gets lost. So the death of a language is the death of a culture.
Absolutely.
And by imposing Hindi and saying that it becomes, or any language for that matter, is problematic, is very problematic.
In fact, imposition makes us accept it. We use it we do it mechanically. We don't dive into it, and there is no romance with the language.
But I've also got to say that unlike Tamil Nadu, in Kerala, Hindi has been accepted. Hindi is a third language, and almost all Kerala students at their school level learn Hindi, however badly that may be. I learned most of my Hindi listening to cricket commentaries And so I could know my numbers quite well. Ikyanve meant this because in terms of the scores, not from the actual textbooks. But Hindi is Hindi is accepted here. There is no hatred towards Hindi, no antagonism towards Hindi. But when it becomes a different kind of imposition, then things.
So my first Hindi teacher in Kendriya Vidyalaya, which when the government, national government, decided that Hindi should be taught as a main language and without the textbooks and all that, there was no conversion of that. But suddenly they decided that was one Mr. Kurup who used to say, ये शब्दों में क्या विद्यास है which was a Malayalam word, ये शब्दों में क्या विद्यास है, and we had to then.
But that's what I also do whenever I don't have a word for something or I can't find a word in Hindi. The best way is to actually immediately resort to Sanskrit.
Sanskrit, which is easy for you to
sound quite erudite.
So there is now, since you were the VC of a Sanskrit university, so and as I said, he wears it very lightly, but he will do this. But there is sandhis in Sanskrit which create a new word like Atiti Devo Bhava, means like, and the other language which has an equal is Urdu, like ye dar or madar or to it's sandhis, it's and I find similar. So Sanskrit allowed you to create words, did it?
Actually, this whole idea of sandhi is there in practically every language. You look at English, correlation.
But that portmanteaus they say, right?
They call it portmanteau, but they also say conjoined words.
Oh, is it?
So,
hyphenated.
They are hyphenated. For example, today, you don't call, earlier postmodernism used to be post-modernism. Now it's postmodernism together. Where there is a prefix or a suffix which is joined. But there are so many instances of two entirely different words kind of joined together, merged together, sometimes dropping or looping off of one part of each word, that kind of thing. You find this in a number of languages. What is different in Sanskrit, Tamil too, you have these sandhis, and Urdu, probably in the Indian subcontinent, is that they function in terms of certain very clear-cut rules. And those rules, you have the Agama Sandhi, the Adesha Sandhi, the Lopa Sandhi, the Ditva Sandhi, where there are certain kinds of, in terms of the consonants that come up or the vowels that come up, and how they merge, they work according to certain rules. Now, whether the rules came first or the practice came first, of course the practice must have came first. There must have been inherent rule riddenness to it, which grammarians later were able to bring out.
Urdu actually is a very, very new and very one of the latest languages.
One of the most beautiful languages.
Yes, and since I'm learning it and I'm doing a bit of reading on it, Turkish meaning of ordu, O-R-D-U, is army. So when the armies got together, the Turks usually came, what we call the Mughals. The Turks, they came and they were speaking Persian and nobody understood Persian, and then there were different Braj Bhasha and different languages here, and all kind of warriors came to that encampment, and then they wanted a new language, which is what we have got.
And then Hindi is an even later language.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's an artificial language,
yeah.
In a certain manner of speaking, where it is actually the Braj Bhasha turned into something else, and so it's an invented language.
Yeah, and now there is a movement where a lot of people are going back to, so the most beautiful, while there is while our generation of people say this, devices have, but they have democratized also, and they have democratized choice to us. So a lot of people are choosing content in their dialects, in their language, like Braj Bhasha, Avdhi, Maithili.
But the problem is that in our linguistic senses, these languages do not appear. All these speakers of these languages are collected under
Hindi.
which is rather unfortunate.
But don't we call Jains also Hindus for that
There you
matter?
go. It's a process of assimilation. There again, assimilation always has force.
But because it's a thriving community, it's a business.
It's a dominant community.
So do you think, MV, that it's all about the economic, sweetheart? Is that?
No, I'm not saying it's all about the economics, but what I'm saying is one will have to consider the economy, and even you cannot speak of culture in isolation, merely as a matter of the mind or merely as a matter of thought. But culture is a practice, and that practice is intrinsically connected to many other practices, and economies is another practice. So, what you find if you look at the basics of most of these cultural practices, you find very strong inscriptions of economic practices at the same time. We speak of modernity here in Kerala, and we speak of modernity. What is modernity? What really happened with modernity? Was this just a change in terms of mental aspirations, in terms of the conception of an individual, or in terms of a different notion of time, or was there something that kind of underpitted all this in terms of real changes in economic practices, even in systems of taxation, in agricultural rules, in property ownership? Was there something that came up? How can you talk of individualism in a society, in a community where there was no possibility of private ownership of property?
Absolutely.
So when private ownership of property comes, one may also need to speak about the individual.
Absolutely.
So that's how it, I think, kind of comes together.
And this, I will not leave this podcast without talking about that, because the best piece I read about you was the hero image of yours, and it was really a piece which made me contemplate and think.
The one in Wire.
One in Wire.
The purpose of heroic images.
Purpose of heroic images, and so we will talk about that briefly. Is it a prevalent practice, or it's always been, and since this is also a show of visual arts, what are the symbols and the images and since theatre plays and drama plays and this theatre can actually you can get to convince people much better through an image and through iconography. So if you can talk about that briefly.
See, the concept of the hero has been there all through. It's not as if it's something new. The idea of someone who can encapsulate, who can symbolize the entirety of community. It's a very ironic, contradictory thing. It's usually someone who's uncommon who becomes the hero. Someone who's uncommon in terms of his prowess, in terms of his ability, or in terms of his godliness, or whatever, who's different from the rest, who can become a representative of them. So to become a hero, you're different. But by being different, you become a hero who represents all these people. And people identify with his travails, his fate, his difficulties, etc. So this idea of the hero has been there all through, whether it be in Western or Eastern or Chinese or Japanese. The idea of the hero has been there, and that idea has changed depending on different contexts and different cultural backgrounds. They have changed. But they were all products of community thinking, so to speak, or community imagination. I've written this little piece, major piece, I should say, about a person called Shaktan Thamburan in Kerala. He was a very violent king. And he came at a point of time when British colonialism was almost on the verge of really taking over Kerala. And he actually created a cult, or he created a very strong, the image of a strong king. And much more than what they did, the people started celebrating this image, because what it represented was a kind of need, a felt need for a shift from earlier value systems to a new value system, especially in the phase of British colonialism. To face up to that, you need power, you need to be strong, that kind of a thing. And this person seemed to represent that. Shaktan Thamburan didn't create that image. The people created that image. The community created that image. What is important about these heroic images that I spoke of in that article is that these are not images created by the people. The image of Hitler as a child-loving, parental, beloved father figure was not created by the people. It was deliberately constructed by his propaganda machine. And it was disseminated among the people in order to create a certain aura of the person, a certain image of the person that would help in concretizing his power. And what you see in Trump, again, I've given that picture of Trump as a Superman, and Superman is a myth that Americans still, go back to. Even now, every new film of Superman is received with great, a superhero. Exactly. The whole way in which Trump has been presented by his aides, by his propaganda people as a Superman, and coming home, our own beloved Prime Minister being represented as a arch photographer who doesn't need to take off the lens of his camera, and as a sadhu and whatnot and whatnot. Now, all these are not what you call community-generated heroic images. They are imposed upon the communities. And that is where this whole image of the hero becomes modus operandi of a totalitarian dictatorial system and even of fascist systems. When you look at all these three, the similarities are unmistakable. They're too glaring to ignore.
And I have to be guilty to have been in advertising, and advertising has actually contributed to this to spin doctors, as the Americans give us good words, spin doctors, as they say. The entire PR machinery. Today you can pay a publication money, regular money, and they can write great things about you, and because it's again all about running the show and
working the system.
So this was no different from so the neighboring state like Tamil Nadu, which had MGR MGR and NTR, their film image contributed to their political image, right?
But I think there is a significant difference there. Their political image was based upon the film image, which was not imposed.
Oh.
It's a film image that came to be established through a series of films, and where there was a cult of the hero, as Benjamin would put it, a cult of the hero, where it's not the individual characters who matter, but the actor himself as someone superhuman. And that kind of a hero figure is there in Tamil culture. which got translated into shall we say, a political hero image. But at the same time, what is interesting in that hero image is that that hero image survives only insofar as that hero is able to provide different forms of welfare measures to the people at large. So I would say that even if it is not the most savory of things, there is an element of democracy there, because ultimately they can continue to be the hero only by serving the people. And their service of the people is primarily directed at the lower income groups, the weak ones, the people who are marginalized, etc., etc. These heroic images are different because there is no iota, not even an iota of democracy in that. It's purely imposed from above. And it is to enable a certain kind of, not just a totalitarian regime, but it also to enable daylight robbery. Because the connection between our present fascist system and late capitalism is absolutely clear. More and more wealth is getting accumulated in less and less hands. Even when a common farmer or one of us, for instance, takes a loan and we cannot repay that, the banks will move against us, we will even be imprisoned. When we take, say, 2 lakhs as loan and we can't repay that, the law will come after us. But if you take 20,000 crore as loan, there will be no law to take care of you. And this stark disparity is where, strangely indeed, capitalism is working against its own democratic aspirations, because the resources are dwindling and they need to make more short-term profit. And that can only be made by putting the wealth more and more into the hands of smaller numbers of people. Just the latest, I'm sorry to say that, I think the news just came out today that nuclear energy is going to be privatized. Now, what it means is that when everything gets privatized, and what is the state doing? It is a state which should be controlled. The state is in collusion with those forces in such a way that ultimately when a crunch comes, there will be only a minority, a very small minority, who will be able to get by. And that's how it is. It's a crisis of the system too.
Yes, and this is all, as you said, deliberately done, and this they have taken from theatre and
But
it is
badly.
Machiavellian.
Yes,
yeah.
and with no taste.
Yes, so there are two. There's the next podcast we need to do is theatre aesthetics in public life, which I will come back. We'll hire a boat, or we will sit somewhere. We'll sit somewhere and have that important discussion, because that is very important. We have run out of time. I promise that I'm going to come back with a second edition of this on the things we just spoke about. Thank you, MV.
Thank you.
I hope you had a good time.
I had a good time. I was surprised that it took more than an hour. You're very persuasive.
No, you are in depth, so it was fun for both of us. Join us. We need to have such conversations. We need to float into it, and they do call it streaming.